So let's talk about women's rights in the context of what's going on in Iran right now and what's going on in the US. Because women's rights, human rights, basic rights, like justice, matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So I'm sure you've seen the reporting of how the women in Iran are rising up against the oppressive Iranian regime that's been in place since the 1979 revolution. And yesterday, right here in DC, there was a rally, a protest against the oppressive, theocratic Iranian regime, a protest that was sparked when the so-called Iranian morality police murdered a 22-year-old woman who wasn't covering enough of her hair in public. And here's the reporting about yesterday's rally in DC by WUSA News 9. Headline: Demonstrators take to the streets of DC in solidarity with the uprising in Iran. Protests in Iran broke out following the death of Mahsa Amini, who died in police custody after being arrested for unsuitable attire. Iranian singer Shervin Hajapour's viral song that has been adopted as the anthem for the anti-government protests in Iran rang through downtown Washington, D.C. as thousands of demonstrators took to the streets of the nation's capital. Protesters gathered at Farragut Square and in front of the White House as part of a worldwide day of rallies in solidarity with the people of Iran following 3 weeks of unrest. The uprising in Iran was sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old who died in police custody following her arrest by the Islamic Republic for unsuitable attire after being accused of wearing her hijab too loosely. Quote, "This is deeper than just being about hijab, than a woman being not in control of her bodily autonomy. It's about an oppressive regime that continues to abuse its power," said Mimi Zaid, one of the speakers during Saturday's rally. The movement is being led primarily by women and the younger generation that are angry about the government repression, rising poverty, and violations of human rights. Dozens of demonstrators in Iran have been killed during the protests. And among those in attendance at yesterday's protest in D.C. were my wife, Nilufar, and my beloved mother-in-law, Mary, who is 80 years young and out there making her voice heard. And I want to share a quick personal story, because you see, my wife Nilufar grew up in Iran. She was there during the 1979 revolution. She was a middle school student, and before the revolution, she was going to school with boys, co-education, and not long after the revolution hit, some of those same boys were carrying weapons, guns, rifles in the streets, pointing them at the women, including my wife and my mother-in-law, telling them to cover up more of their hair. So this oppression of women has been going on in Iran for decades. Now, Iran has a president, President Raisi, but the real power, the oppressive power, is wielded by the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. And Khamenei has his theocratic ruling class in place, the Mullahs. And the Mullahs and the theocratic regime believes that it can dictate what women can and can't do. For example, how much hair they must cover in public. And if they don't, they will suffer consequences, including the consequences that visited 22-year-old Mahsa Amini. So yes, we stand in solidarity with the women of Iran in their struggle And let's face it, friends, their struggle, the women of Iran, is our struggle. And not in some vague or intangible way, because we have our very own American mullahs, right, sitting up on high. We've got our own supreme leaders, don't we? And we've got the American mullahs in Congress. And we've got the American mullahs in state legislatures. These are the people who believe they can impose their will, born of their religious beliefs, on the women of America. The American mullahs believe they can dictate to women what they can and can't do, what reproductive decisions they can make, and which ones they can't make. The American mullahs believe that they get to make women's reproductive decisions for them without their consent and over their objection. So yes, their struggle is our struggle. It's a struggle for women's rights, human rights, basic rights, dignity, decency, fairness. And it's a struggle that we can't afford to lose. You know, we still have some opportunities here in the U.S. that, frankly, they don't have in Iran, because they don't really have free and fair elections in Iran. I know. We are struggling on the free and fair elections front as well, with these American mullahs who are trying to put measures in place to nullify our votes, to suppress our votes, but they can't stop us from going to the polls. And we will go to the polls in numbers too big to rig and too real to steal. And we can vote out the American mullahs. We can vote them out of Congress. We can vote them out of our state legislatures. And when we do that, we might just have the numbers in Congress to work our way up to the supreme mullahs, sitting up on high, up on that Supreme Court, who believe that an American theocracy is the way to go, that those few people, the supreme leaders, get to decide for the women of America what they can and can't do with their reproductive health decisions. Yeah, this is a struggle we cannot afford to lose. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.